Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tara. You probably know me from the Blazers Edge podcast, which I co-host weekly with Dan Meringue. This is the first episode of a new podcast. It's called Women's Hops and Talks, and we're going to be elevating the voice of women in basketball. Before I go on, I want to introduce my co-host, Kendyl. You want to tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am currently a college student. I'm a junior at Ithaca College. It's in kind of central upstate New York. So I'm very far away from Blazers, but I'm originally from Portland. So obviously, by nature, I have to be a Blazers fan. And I am currently studying television and radio with a sports production concentration. And I have the goal of kind of working in the NBA, working in the media side. And this is kind of my first step in kind of getting in that field a little bit. And I'm very excited to be co-host of this, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm really looking forward to working with you. I'm not going to say you're young enough to be my daughter, but I've done the math and it could happen. So I think we're going to bring a different lens to some of our discussions, but you're also located on the East Coast. And I'm always curious about what people in different parts of the country are thinking about things that we share in common. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about kind of like what the East Coast bias is about some things, so keep your ears to the ground. And anytime you're walking down the street out there in upstate New York and you hear people talking about the Blazers, you got to let me know what they're talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, so in the spirit of getting to know each other a little bit and so the listeners can learn more a little bit about us, who was your favorite trailblazer when you were growing up?
Oh, growing up? Well, I didn't really start following the Blazers until I was a little bit older. I went to some games when I was younger, but I didn't actually really pay attention to who the players were. Once I started paying attention more, I always really loved Robin Lopez. He was kind of the one that I loved watching him on and off the court. I would say more currently, obviously, I love Damon CJ, but I think I have to go with Mo Harkless. I've always loved Mo. I was very scared all summer that they were going to trade him, and I was upset because he was always involved in trade talks, but I'm glad that he's here. Hopefully he stays for as long as we can keep him. And yeah, I would definitely have to say currently Mo is my favorite.
Awesome. How about favorite player like in the NBA at large? I mean, obviously the Blazers are going to be your very favorite,
Yes.
but there's a lot of really cool basketball players in the NBA.
Yeah, so I'm actually a huge DeMar DeRozan fan. I love watching him play. He's another one, obviously, I love on and off the court. I think his playing style is just so much fun to watch. Obviously, they call him like the king of the mid range and all that. And I think he kind of reminds me of like he kind of has an older playing style, and I really like watching that, especially in the world of the NBA now where it's all about three-pointers. I love that he can still go out there and score 50 points without even attempting a three. So, yeah, I love watching him, and I think he's incredible.
That's awesome. Did you play sports growing up?
Yeah, I was really big into soccer and softball growing up. I actually never played basketball, funny enough. So I'm really small, and basketball never interested me as far as playing it. I would play with my brother in the backyard, but I never competed and played. But I played soccer. Soccer was kind of my main thing, and I stuck with that for a really long time. But as I got older, it kind of turned into more covering sports rather than playing it. But I still definitely love going out there and playing and doing anything I can, just not as competitive as it used to be.
No, you're a sports broadcasting major, is that right?
No, so I'm a television and radio major, so it's which is very broad at my school, but I have a sports production concentration. So basically, I learn about kind of the video side of sports, so covering sports. I do a lot of filming of sports and sports photography and all of that. I work for our football team and I film for them, and I've done stuff for the athletic department, shooting highlight reels and different things like that. So I'm kind of in that side of it more so.
What interested you about sports? Was that something that, you did in high school? Were you on the school newspaper or anything, or what draws you to that?
Yeah, so I actually came into college wanting to be like a TV director, and that's why I'm a television major. And I kind of got thrown into shooting sports because I was the multimedia editor for my school newspaper in college. I started doing it, and I was the only person on kind of in the multimedia section that really knew sports. So I kind of automatically got put into filming, and I very quickly just fell in love with it. And that kind of started getting me more into, obviously I've always watched sports and been really into it, but that got me looking deeper into sports and getting more into looking at kind of the business side and more of the media stuff and trying to get out there and shoot as much as I could. And I fell in love with it instantly and immediately just was like, nope, I need to work in sports. I need to do this. And because I loved it so much so fast. And I'm like, I know this is what I have to be doing.
So do you do live interviews of the athletes at your school as well, or cover any sports in that way? Or do you do mostly like the video production and stuff like that?
Yeah, so when I was the multimedia editor, we would do video packages where we would do interviews. I'm not really a trained journalist, so my interviews weren't always the greatest. I definitely was better on the video side of just getting highlights and that type of stuff. But as far as what I do now, I'm not doing interviews. I'm really just shooting, going out there and shooting stuff.
Doing all that behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Can't wait to hear about some of the more of the stuff that you get to do. So if you had a signature basketball move, you could have any signature basketball move, what would it be?
Signature move. Ooh, that's a hard one. This might be a little cheesy, but the thing that I always remember about players is what they do at the free throw line. All of the shimmies and the different things like that. I always find those are really funny, and it's not as glamorous as maybe some of the big guys who are dunking all the time and have like big moves like that. But I've always found those the funniest things to watch and the most entertaining. So I think I'd probably want to do. I don't know what it would be, but it would have to be something clever when I go to the line.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah. When you figure it out, we got to do some video of it so we can learn about it. My signature move, if I was going to have a signature move, I would be the person who throws the lob for the alley-oops. Because alley-oops are my absolute favorite, but there's no way on earth I would ever be able to do them myself. But I played soccer too, and nothing gave me more pleasure than getting an assist. I loved getting an assist. That was more fun to me than getting a goal, because if I got a goal, it was like because I was shooting it at somebody and I just shot it so badly that it went in. So I really want to be the person who throws the alley-oop that somebody else slams in. That would be mine.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Last question. If you were an NBA player, who do you think you would most be like?
So when you first asked me this question, I had no idea, and I thought about it for a very long time, could not come up with anything. So I called in some of my friends who are big NBA fans and asked them, and I actually had two different people say Chris Paul, sorry. We were talking about Paul George earlier, so something Chris Paul, which one of my friends described as the reasoning was because I'm small and I'm fun off the clock, but when I'm working, I'm very that no BS and I work really hard. And he said, you're also generally very authoritative. So I guess Chris Paul, probably.
So if I'm slacking off, are you going to come and start jumping on my back and getting all mad at me for not paying attention? No. That's funny. Maybe
I'm not quite as intense as Chris Paul can be, but I like to think my first thought was kind of more of a CJ McCollum, where obviously he's an extremely hard worker and performs very well, but he is kind of known for being goofy and very lighthearted and stuff. And I feel like I have a good balance between the two. So I'd say kind of a Chris Paul and CJ McCollum mix.
That sounds good. Well, we're going to be getting together a couple times a month, and we're going to be talking to women who are connected to basketball. I'm so excited. We've got some really great interviews lined up with people who talk about sports, people who cover sports, just some super fans. We're going to do it a couple of months, and or a couple times a month. Our first interview is today going to be with Jamie Hudson, who covers the Portland Trailblazers with NBC Sports Northwest. She hosts The Scoop, which is like the pregame show. Her official title is digital host reporter for NBC Sports Northwest. So here we go to talk to Jamie. We're super excited to have this conversation. It's really fun, and I think the viewers are really going to get to enjoy learning more about Jamie Hudson from NBC Sports Northwest. It's a great interview. So Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to have you on the show. You are the first guest of Women's Hops and Talks. We're so happy you could make time for us. There's no game tonight, but do you ever have a night off when it's basketball season?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you guys for having me. I'm super pumped to be on your guys' podcast. And no, Tara, not really. Tonight, I'll be writing a game preview for tomorrow's game. And I'm prepping for the show tomorrow. But that's what I love about the season is it's just nonstop.
Well, so as a digital host reporter for NBC Sports Northwest, you wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things. Can you tell us about some of the different types of jobs that you do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny, Tara, because obviously I know fans can see the scoop when I host that, but there's so many other things. I'll be tweeting from the NBC Sports Northwest account, but you would never know who does that, so sometimes that'll be me, or sometimes I'll be editing video, going to the practice facility and covering the Blazers practice. I mean, it's kind of funny how many different jobs you have as in the digital world, especially with social media just exploding, right? So there's a lot of different duties, because I sometimes get asked oh, do you actually work 40 hours a week? And I'm like, oh, actually during the season it's more than that. It's not just hosting a live stream, even though that is my favorite part. But yeah, there's a lot of different responsibilities.
Yeah, you must do so much prep work. Just doing a 1 hour podcast once a week is a lot of work. So I don't know how you manage to do all those things at the same time. It's amazing. Well, I want to start back and get to know you a little bit, because we see you, like you said, on Facebook Live doing shows all the time, but you're always so busy giving us up to date on what's going on with the Blazers. We don't know a lot about you. So how did you come to be be a sports reporter? Where did that interest come from?
So it's funny. Growing up, I grew up in a small farm town, and basically it was you played sports, or or you'd be in 4-H, you'd have your cows, and so I went the sports route. But anyways, I knew I wasn't going to be in the WNBA, unfortunately, and I knew I didn't want to coach there, so I decided to talk about sports. That was the coolest thing, and thinking about getting paid to talk about sports is awesome. My senior project of high school was a weekly show, and I remember that was so much work, but it was so awesome. So it all started in high school, actually, which is crazy.
So were you a basketball player?
I was. Yep, I was a basketball player and a volleyball player.
What position did you play in basketball?
I was a shooting guard, so I could make the threes, Tara, but I'm so short and I'm so slow that I was okay, no, I'm not going anywhere with this, that's for sure.
So was the 3-pointer your signature move?
Yes, and basically my only move. I would never drive into the paint. I was nope, I'm not going to. So.
Do you ever get out there and shoot around with any of the Blazers?
No. Sometimes I'm last season I really wanted to challenge Alan Crabb, because they do that 3-point shooting, or they used to. I think they still do, and it's Harkless now, and maybe even Zach Collins pops into it. But after practice they do this 3-point shooting contest, and I always wanted to, but I was oh, probably better not ask. I just better stay over here with the media.
Well, if you ever do it, you got to tweet about it and let us know how it goes.
Oh yes, I will for sure. Even I'm sure it would be really embarrassing for me, but I'm sure it'd be super fun.
So you are a proud Gonzaga grad, as it says in your Twitter bio. That's awesome. Did you major in like sports reporting, or what did you do to prepare for the role you're in now?
Yeah, well, first off, yes, those eggs, Tara. That's a good find. I majored in broadcast studies with a minor in sports management, so that really worked out well.
So what's the hardest part of covering the Trailblazers?
I think the hardest part sometimes is probably like finding a balance, because being a reporter of like not being biased, or just having that, like, you're right in the middle. How do I want to explain it? Because obviously you get to know the players and you want to root for them, but you're reporting on them. So just kind of being even kill, but also having fun. Like on my live stream, I want to talk with Blazer fans, and I understand, like, if it was a heartbreaking loss, like we've had so many this season. So it's still like having that feeling and connecting with Blazer fans as I'm reporting or doing a live stream, but still realizing, hey, I'm a journalist, if that makes sense.
I can see how that would be hard.
It is, yeah, especially with social media now, because I like to comment and tweet about things. So yeah, I mean, I definitely am more of a fan reporter, especially with the scoop, I guess you'd say. But yeah, anyways, it's fun. I think that's the hardest part, because there's really, besides all the prep work, it's I love what I get to do, so I can't complain, Tara.
Kendyl, I've been like totally monopolizing Jamie. Do you have any questions for her?
Oh, you're totally fine. I had to make a scene change of people walked in the office and it got loud all of a sudden, so I had to move real fast. Yeah, so I know I was talking kind of Tara earlier about me being kind of a student, kind of someone who was in your spot, or however long ago it was. You're very young, so obviously not long ago, but kind of coming out of college, coming out of college, kind of what was like your first step, and like how did you kind of get into that role that you have now?
Oh yeah, that is a great question, because it's so scary coming out of college and you're thinking, okay, so I've got my degree, what do I do now? So fortunately for me at Gonzaga, there was a career center, which, I'm sure you have a career center as well. That actually was like my go-to place, because they connected me with a Gonzaga alum, actually here at NBC Sports Northwest, formerly Comcast Sportsnet. And I started emailing with her, telling her what my hopes and dreams were, and she's actually was in the sales department here. So I truly believe in networking and talking to as many people as you can, and I do think alumni love to help out current students. So, and I have Gonzaga students coming to me and they want a job shadow, and it's such a great feeling thinking, oh, I'm trying to help them. And so anyways, I think reaching out to any alumni is important. And so for me, what happened, I started emailing, and she kind of put me in touch with the right people. And I really started as what I like to call a student teacher, or like a substitute teacher, I should say. So I started as a sub, filling in for different hosts, and then eventually was able to work my way in, and there was an opening, and then I was a full-time host. And so I worked out, but networking is key, and taking feedback and criticism, because when I first, auditioned, basically, you have to listen to what they liked and what they really didn't like about what you do on camera or whatever. And so just making sure that you can handle the feedback, because that was tough for me. Now I've got some tougher skin, but at first it was kind of difficult.
That's such great advice.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
So something that kind of obviously we've talked about this podcast is obviously focusing on women in the basketball world, and being just a female journalist in general is very difficult, but especially in a male-dominated field like the sports world. So how do you, what kind of challenges have you gotten with that and faced just being a woman in a male-dominated world, basically?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Kendall. And it's funny because when Tara asked, what is the hardest part about your job? That did enter my mind that it is difficult at times. For me, growing up, I was always a tomboy. And so I always, like, in my head, I was like, oh, I'm one of the boys, right? And it's funny, like, in high school, I never wore pink. I thought, no, I can't wear pink. Like, I'm on the basketball team. And obviously, looking at me now, I'm really girly, and I love that. Like, I embrace that because you can still love sports, be badass on the court, and be a woman wearing pink, wearing, whatever you want. So I think it's so important to realize that there are going to be those people out there, those guys out there that don't think that you know what you're talking about. But being confident is so key, and just trying to be a part of the guys' world is like, let's see, how do I explain this? Being a woman in this field, you almost have to know more than the guy next to you that's in the same position, just because, like you said, Kendall, maybe they don't believe you as much because you are a woman. So I try to do even more research or extra prep just to make sure that I'm on my game.
Great. Yeah, that's kind of all I have in that field.
Great advice. And when you were talking about job shadowing and coming on board as working with a Gonzaga alumni, I couldn't help but thinking to ask, has Zach Collins asked to job shadow you yet?
I'm still waiting for that, Tara. Yeah. No,
that would
I'm
be
sure
a really long shadow, a really tall shadow.
No kidding. It's funny. So in Vegas Summer League this summer, I got a chance to cover him and like meet his parents. Like we interviewed his parents, and then I'd say like the second day we were doing this long feature on him, I told him I was a Gonzaga alum, and he was like, "Oh, no way!" Like, 'cause he didn't know. And it's funny. He's like, "When?" And I told him the year, and then he looked at me, and I looked back at him, and I was like, "Okay, yep, I am getting older." So I won't say the year because of Zach Collins' reaction to that, but it was pretty funny.
I saw that feature. That was a really great feature. I will put a link to the feature in the show notes because that was really you got to spend some time with him and his friends.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's always fun to get to know somebody off the court, and I feel like Damian Lillard is like the best example of who lets you in, when he tweets, and it's so cool to get to know them as a person, their personality. I think that's fun. Like, that's what I love about social media, is just that you feel like now you're more connected to a player rather than just watching them on the court. Anyway, sorry, that's just something that popped in my head.
No, that's awesome. I'm curious, like, what it was like when you were just getting started and you would talk to somebody who was, a player, like a professional player. Like, what was like some of the early memories you had of learning how to cope in those sort of situations?
Yeah, no, it's funny. One of the memories that always stands out when I think back to the beginning is this was actually before I had the job here at NBC Sports Northwest. I was doing some like freelance work, so just a couple of jobs for some websites, and it was Red Carpet Talk was the name of the website. Anyways, we were covering Brian Grant's foundation, Shake It Till We Make It, and it was here at the Rose Garden. Well, at then Rose Garden, here at the Motus. And I remember that was the first time, like, I got to meet Brian Grant and talk with him, and I was so nervous, honest. But also, Charles Barkley was the guy that I had to interview, and he was like one of my very first interviews. I was freaking out, and he was hilarious. I asked if he had any advice, and he just said, well, keep doing what you're doing and looking good. Or something like that, very Charles Barkley like, right? But I remember thinking, well, he's just a person too, like, he, because he was very down to earth, even though it was really scary to interview him and Brian Grant and a lot of other amazing athletes that I always like look up to, right? But then I realized they just want to talk to you, like, it's just a person to person, and so that actually event really helped me kind of get past all my like just nerves, I guess.
So it sounds like when you were first getting started, they were some of the players that you got to talk to were helpful in helping you feel comfortable and making it a little bit easier for you. Do you ever feel like sort of in that role yourself with some of the rookies coming in? Like when you were covering Zach Collins and he was like brand new to the league, just drafted, maybe he was like super comfortable with that already. Or do you find when you meet some of the younger players, you're kind of taking that sort of like helping them break in role?
Right. Oh, no, that does make sense. I think nowadays, because they get like, well, for example, Zach Collins, because he was in the national championship game and Final Four, he already was so comfortable with it because he had to deal with so much media even before getting into the NBA. But I feel like years past, especially players that don't make it to the big dance, like if they're not in the tournament or they're not getting as much coverage, like if they're from a smaller school, their interviews are so short. Like, a guy that doesn't, either one, he doesn't want to talk to you, or two, he's like not comfortable because he's like giving you 2-word answers, which is like the hardest thing when you're a reporter and you're like trying to ask these great questions, right? I've like focused on my questions and then they give you 3-word answers. You're like, oh no, fail. So that's always hard.
Have you talked to Caleb Swanigan yet this year?
A little bit, not one-on-one, just when we're at Blazers practice. So it's kind of with all the other media. But yeah, he's a great one to talk to, and it's so cool, his story. Everyone knows it, Tara, but I love how the Blazer fans have so embraced him. I think it's so cool. And at Moda Center, whenever he checks in, they give him the loudest cheer. It's awesome.
Well, should we move on and talk about just a bit of NBA stuff and find out what you think about what's going on in the NBA at large?
Okay, so you want me to run in this section?
Yeah, why don't you jump in?
Perfect. Okay, so this season so far has already been, even though we're only a few weeks in, it's already been kind of crazy. So what are some of the biggest surprises so far this season for you, Jamie? For not just the Blazers, but just in general in the league?
Well, I'm remembering the Warriors night when they had like 3 technicals, right? Like Draymond Green had a technical, and then Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. And I mean, the Warriors have not been the Warriors you've been accustomed to. So that's been an interesting thing, just watching them. And I almost feel like, and you guys can jump in, do you feel like the Warriors are kind of becoming the Clippers as far as like complaining and whining on the court a bit too much? Because that's how I've been feeling these days.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with all my friends who are NBA fans, and that's actually a comparison that I have a friend who makes all the time and starts comparing them to the Clippers. So yeah, I definitely see that. I think that especially with Steph Curry having his habit of throwing his mouthpiece all the time too, and
he really should not have a mouthpiece. It's never in his mouth. Like, that's the way.
But I think that they're kind of becoming that because they feel like they can, and they're getting away with it for now, but we'll see how long they continue to get away with it.
Yeah, no kidding.
I love how shocked. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Tara.
Oh, I was just saying, I love how shocked they were last year that like people started to not like him as much anymore. And they were just like, but we're the golden team, everybody should love us. Like, and now we have this amazing player and now he's on our team. Like, how could you not like us? And then just a few days ago, or maybe it was even yesterday, Steve Kerr had that interview where he was like, okay, I'll let you guys all tweet this. And then he sat there and he clipped his nails. Like, that is so annoying. Have either of you guys seen that clip?
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Oh, no, he was in front of the pool of reporters and he said that Andre Iguodala was going to start. And then he goes, I'll just wait while you all tweet that. And then he pulls out his nail clippers and clips his nails. And I was just like, okay, that's too far. Like, people thought it was so funny. And I was just like, oh, that's it. You cannot get away with that. That is so snotty.
Right. That's funny. Another thing, I was thinking is like, what's up with the Cleveland Cavaliers? I mean, I guess you lose Kyrie. Look what happens. I don't know.
What were they thinking building that roster this year? I'm just trying to wrap my head around what were they thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question, Tara.
Yeah, I've actually the thing I've kind of been saying about the Cavs this year is people are saying, like, should you be worried about them and the Warriors? And I've always said, like, no, I don't think you should be worried about either, because I think that both of those teams are in positions right now where they know that their seed doesn't matter. If they make the playoffs, they're going to make it to the finals, or at least pretty much make, like, they're almost guaranteed to make it. So I feel like the regular season to them is just kind of a joke. And I think that's very frustrating as just a fan too, because it takes away from the game itself, and then the teams who the regular season is everything to them. And I think that's kind of like, it's almost like disrespectful to the league, it's to other teams and to just the fans in general. I think it's kind of a disrespectful thing. That's why obviously I haven't seen that Steve Kerr video, but things like that, I think that's just like, I think it's just kind of disrespectful, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think it's so cool, though, that Boston's riding this, 10-game winning streak after losing Gordon Hayward, because I thought that was so sad for Hayward. I mean, he's trying, I know he left Utah, but it's like he's trying to build something new. And so the fact that the Celtics are, maybe scaring the Cavs a little bit, at least that kind of has made it a little more fun, I think, for fans as far as out in the Eastern Conference.
I love that there was all this just massive movement over the summer. I mean, this summer was so entertaining, and there was so much movement, but some of the teams that are shocking everybody are like Detroit. They're like the second best team in the East right now. Like, where did that come from? And Orlando playing well. And Philadelphia is on like a 5-game winning streak. What wouldn't we be happy with a 5-game winning streak in Portland right now? It's just, it's fun with everybody focusing on OKC and, all the Houston and all these teams, which are, they're going to be fine or whatever. But I just love the fact that it's kind of pivoted everybody's attention to some of these other markets for a while. So we can like lavish a little bit of attention and love on some of these teams that maybe at the end of the season aren't going to find themselves in the same place, but they might. But I like to the beginning of the season when people pop up that you are not expecting.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, the big surprise for me this season has actually been Victor Oladipo. He's someone who's been like really standing out. I mean, obviously he was part of the Paul George trade, and he's averaging like 7 points more than he was last season. Obviously it's only a few weeks in, but still he's close to 23 points a game. Like, that's something that like no one was expecting him to come out and do that. Everyone was kind of like, oh, he just kind of got thrown onto this Pacers team that really didn't have anyone after Paul George left.
Surprise!
And then having him kind of stand out and take that like face of the franchise kind of, and starting to take over that role and actually getting wins for that team, like, that's been really surprising. And again, like, yeah, it's only 12 games in, so whether or not that's going to last all season, who knows? But just the fact that he's been able to do that for the like last 12 games or however many, like, that's been very impressive to me.
I'm really kind of shocked at the decline of the Bulls. I mean, wow. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be shocked, but like you were saying, about the Paul George trade and Victor Oladipo being a part of that, and everyone, people always have really strong opinions as soon as a trade comes out, and there's always one team that's the clear winner and the other team that nobody can possibly imagine how anybody could have possibly entered into that trade. It's so lopsided. And then time goes by and life happens and things even out a little bit more, but I can't see any way that the Chicago Bulls have won anything.
No, they had a rough summer. They had a very rough summer. And
one of the things about the Cavs that people are talking about is, everybody always says, as long as LeBron is there, you can't count out the Cavs. Like, as long as LeBron is on that team, he can just will anything to happen. And I thoroughly believe that. But LeBron is also 32. And I strongly believe that he could play till he's 40 and be amazing. But at some point, there's going to be a new face to this league. So who do y'all think are some good candidates for the new face of the next face of the NBA?
Giannis Antetokounmpo, hands down. The Greek freak, man. He's he's so athletic, and he's been showing this season that he's worked on his 3-point shot, which is like the only thing I felt like, Tara, he couldn't do. I mean, he can play defense. He's so lengthy. And I just want to hear people try and pronounce his name, honestly.
Yeah, I've had this conversation a lot recently, and I think that Giannis is I think he definitely is a front runner for that. But kind of the argument I've heard against him is that he's in a small market, which that definitely will hurt him. Whether or not he's going to stay in that on that team forever, obviously, like I personally don't think he's going to stay with the Bucks for his whole career. But I also, there's the issue of kind of his personality, which obviously he has a great personality, but he's not as vocal as some of the other people who have been the faces of the league. And I feel like that's kind of part of the dig almost. It's like you kind of have to play the part too, not just have the skill behind it. Because I think that there are definitely times where obviously LeBron is the best player in the league right now, but I don't necessarily believe the face of the league is always the best player. It's kind of who, at some point, maybe they were the best player, but maybe they aren't currently, but there's just some sort of hype around them for some reason. And I think Giannis, he's just not very vocal. I think he has the personality. He just doesn't show it very often. So I think that's kind of a downfall for him. But someone who I've been saying, which it's too early to tell, but I would love to see someone like Ben Simmons come up and take that spot. I think he's definitely someone that could do that, because especially when you hear him talk and you see him kind of do interviews and things like that, I think he's someone who could definitely be looked at in a couple of years as someone possibly taking that. Obviously, yeah, it is a little early to tell, but he's always been kind of in the back of my mind when this conversation comes up.
Kendyl, you're not going to say Lonzo Ball?
Oh, yeah. So people always say that Lonzo. I'm the first person to say I am not on the Lonzo bandwagon. So I think that the hype around him is going to fade real fast, and I think that without his dad, there is no hype around Lonzo. So I think that's going to give it like 2 more years. And
I think Lonzo's going to end up a fine player. I don't think he's probably going to maybe reach the ceiling that his dad has been planning for him. But one of the things that fascinates me about the Lonzo story is, people saying, that LeVar is making it so hard on Lonzo, and also people at the same time saying, but Lonzo's like such a great even-keeled kid. I think it's almost like possible that this could accelerate some of his development, the fact that everybody just wants to come in and crush him on the first night. Like if everybody approaches him like Patrick Beverley did, and they just bring the absolute most they possibly can carry the first time they play him. I don't know. I sometimes think, maybe that's like a good thing for him, because he'll just have to take care of that right away. Now, whether he can survive making it through all of that, I guess, is another thing. But it seems like if he can make it through everybody bringing their best night after night after night, I don't know, maybe I don't think he's necessarily the next face of the NBA, though.
Right.
Well, do you think we have time for doing some quick questions?
Yeah. I think we should probably go through these.
Kendyl and I are trying to figure out different segments to do for the podcast, and we can't come up with like a really good name for this segment. So we were going to call it like knee-jerk reaction segment. So just really, really fast, quick answers. We're not going to discuss everyone deeply, but just like, quick answers. So should we take turns asking him, Kendyl?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so who do you think is going to score the most points in a game this year? Jamie, we'll let you answer that first.
I'm going first. Knee-jerk reaction. You know what? Damian Lillard came to mind, so there we go. Let's do it. Yeah.
I think LeBron is going to have a 75-point game, like one of his last games in, like, it's going to be like a Cleveland. It's going to be like a Devin Booker situation. It's going to be like one of the last games in Cleveland, and everyone's going to be afraid it's going to be LeBron's last game before he leaves. And so they're just going to feed him the ball all night, and it's going to be crazy, and everyone's going to go nuts, and he's going to score like 75 points.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. I think kind of with what we were talking about before with Giannis, I think with the season he's having so far, I think
Oh
he
my
has a
gosh.
lot to prove right now. And I think
Yeah.
he's already averaging over 30 points right now. So I think he's going to come out and have one monster game. And
Yeah. He can pretty much score at will. It's amazing.
Yes.
yeah,
Seriously.
no one can stop him. So
Okay, next question. Who's going to get the most technical fouls this season?
Can I say the Warriors team? No, I would go. Oh, it's hard because I go back. I think I still feel like DeMarcus Cousins. Still, yeah, that was the guy that pops in my head. So I'll go with him.
yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Definitely Cousins. Or, I mean, you can't also rule out Draymond for that.
Yeah.
I think the league is kind of against him in that way. He's always going to get technical fouls. But I think Cousins is definitely up there.
Cousins, I think, is leading right now early on in the season, but I think, I don't know. It seems like Kevin Durant has been playing pretty mad these days. I don't know that he's going to lead in the
Good
most
point.
technicals, but I think he's going to get a lot. Okay, favorite NBA rivalry, either between teams or players or whatever.
Oh gosh, I always think when I think about this Blazer fan base and the hashtag Beat LA, like that, even though the Lakers have not been relevant, it's still such a fun rivalry because, especially the older Blazer fans, they just they hate the Lakers so much, and I love to see that.
Yeah, I actually read, I think it was a Bleacher Report article recently that was like the top rivalries in the league right now. And the one that I found really funny was Mark Cuban versus the refs, which I think is
That's
hysterical. So I had to bring that up. But yeah, I definitely think that I was going to say the Blazers and Lakers one just because that obviously affects me. And I'm actually going to be in LA next semester. So I've been joking and saying like I'm going to like have to walk around and not wear Blazer stuff if I just want to like lay low and not have to deal with anything. And so that's gonna be an interesting one. But
Are they going to be playing anytime you're there? Because you should totally go.
yeah, so yeah, I'm trying to intern for something out, like something in there. So I might be, who knows, I might be interning for the Lakers or Clippers, and I have to kind of fake my support. Smile my way through. And
well, we will have our fingers crossed. That would be super exciting.
Yeah,
I love the Cavs and the team from the Bay Area rivalry so much. I want it to go on forever. I think I wasn't a huge fan during the Los Angeles Boston rivalry, but if they can drag this one out for a long time, I think it could be really entertaining.
Yeah, I think most of NBA fans in general, like if they don't really have a team that they support, I mean, I grew up in Washington, so like my family is the Supersonics team, and so now it's like my little brother's like, all right, I'll watch the Warriors because I don't have a team anymore, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're just hopping on the bandwagon, but he just enjoys watching them. He does enjoy watching the Blazers as well, but he tells me he likes Steph Curry, so I was like, okay, buddy. He's pretty young though, so he'll grow out of it, Tara.
He's got time.
Right.
Okay, that's good.
so kind of on the flip side of that is, what are your favorite NBA friendships? Kind of like between players right now.
Tara, yeah.
I absolutely loved the Road Trippin' podcast, and I loved Channing Frye and Richard Jefferson together, and it makes me so sad that work has separated them now, because the Road Trippin' podcast was amazing, and I loved their friendship. They just made fun of each other all the time, but you could tell they just were so fond of each other.
Oh, that's cool. Just here locally, obviously, I just think of Dame and CJ, and how great of friends they are. But when you brought that up, Tara, about was it a podcast that they used to do?
Road Trippin' with Channing Frye and Richard Jefferson.
I'll have to look that up.
Oh my gosh, so good.
It's on Undisputed, which is LeBron's site that he kind of started. Yeah.
Okay, cool. But I was just remembering, did you guys ever see last season the Steven Adams and Enes Kanter videos?
The Stash Bros.
The Stash Bros, exactly. Those were hilarious. And promoting Russell Westbrook to be MVP. Anyways, I thought those two have got a pretty great relationship, that's for sure. It's unfortunate that they're not together anymore.
I know. Another old favorite of mine was Rollo and Batum. I loved the two of those. I always wanted to like have somebody make a sitcom about the two of them like sharing a flat together down on South Waterfront. I just thought that would be so great.
Yeah, that would have been gold. Yeah.
Well, we gotta wrap it up tonight. But Jamie, since this podcast, Women's Hops and Talks, we are elevating the voice of women who love basketball. And so the last question for you today is, what woman inspires you who is in the league or has to do with basketball?
I got two because I couldn't pick just one. I do that a lot though. I'm like, oh dang it, I need to be more decisive.
No, we want to get out the word about, there's so many amazing women out there. We want to get the word out about all of them.
Yeah, there are. And so this was actually my assistant basketball coach. She basically, because when I was in high school and middle school, I was not confident. That was the big thing, is I never believed in myself. And I always called her Jude. It's Judy Schomer. That was her name then. Now she's married. But anyways, she basically instilled in me that I can do it. And I think that she was so hard on me. Like, I'll start crying when I think about it, because she was like so tough on me, but she always believed in me. And that's why I almost feel like she would like push me more, or even yell at me more during practice, like tell me I'm not working hard enough. But I knew that she was just trying to get me to be my best that I could be. And anyways, I'll never forget her, and we still keep in touch. And anyways, I'm not good at explaining like all my own things. It's funny, Tara, I like to talk about the Blazers and I like to report on other people, but like talking about myself, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't like
the spotlight is on you.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, Tara, I can't do it. No, but
you're doing amazing.
Oh, thanks, Tara. And then, so I just want to mention my great grandma, because she was the biggest Mariners fan, the biggest Seahawks fan, the biggest Sonics fan. And I know that because of her, I am where I am today, because I mean, this lady was like first of all, she was the sweetest old lady, but when she was watching her games, oh, look out, world. Like, she was screaming. She was scary. Like, and no, she just got so into, especially the Mariners. I mean, she could have been like Lou Piniella. Like, you would be like, oh my gosh, Grandma, you're like going to knock over the bases or something. I don't know, but I think watching her and seeing that passion for sports, like, she just instilled that in me. So when I watch my Gonzaga games, that's kind of how I am too.
That's awesome. I bet those two women are so proud of you and what you have accomplished. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Well, I am so proud of this podcast. Like, I think it's so awesome what you and Kendyl are doing, and I want you guys to keep it up, and it's awesome. And I am just honored to be on the podcast today.
Well, you got us off to a great start. Kendyl, any last words or questions for Jamie before we let her go?
No, I think I'm all good.
Awesome.
Yeah, but thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you guys. And keep working with this podcast. And I would love to be a guest like later in the season. Like, we can catch up, So that's awesome. Okay, well, thanks, guys. And I will just talk to you soon. It was nice to meet you, Kendyl.
It was nice to meet you, too. Okay.
Bye.
Well, thank you so much for listening. This has been the first episode of Women's Hops. You can find us every couple weeks. We'll be putting new episodes on the Blazers Edge website, as well as some of our other social media sites like Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, Kendyl, you've been helping out with the Blazers Edge Facebook page. Is that right?
Yes, I have been.
Yeah. So people can follow Blazers Edge at Blazers Edge, visit at blazersedge.com, find Blazers Edge on Facebook. I am on Twitter at TCBBiggs, or you can type in Team Mom Rip City and I will also pop up. Do you have any social media handles you want to share?
Oh, yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Kendyl Bennett 16. I spell my name a little different. It's Kendyl. And yeah, I mostly just tweet about the NBA, honestly. So if you're listening to this, you'll probably like a lot of the stuff I'm tweeting about.
I didn't know there was other stuff to tweet about.
I know, my feed is basically it's mostly just retweets and responses to other NBA accounts.
Well, awesome. This has been really fun, Kendyl. Thank you so much for joining me, being my co-host in this. I'm looking forward to cranking out a bunch of really good episodes. So thanks for listening, everyone, and we will catch you in a few weeks.